One of my biggest pleasures was walking up to the Sacré-Cœur, and that was only about 10 minutes walk from me, up a whole load of steps. You could just get a chance to look across Paris and see it waking up. And I love watching it wake up, watching the delivery drivers come and drop off their produce, or the cafe owners taking out the chairs for the day. Every day I would get up early, about 6 o'clock. I went out early because I wanted to do some filming. And on the first day, I'd gone out and I'd got in a bit of a scrape with the butchers around Rue de Jean. They'd been setting up for the day. There was huge pallets of meat just lying around on the street. I got my movie camera out and I wanted to take some shots of it. I wanted to remember it. One of the butchers got really angry with me about taking photos, and I realised then that I'd have to be much more careful than I am in England about photographing people and filming people. The first rays of sun would catch the top of the 6th floors, 7th floors of these Paris apartment buildings. Angular slices of sunlight would creep down as the sun got higher in the day. By about 10 o'clock, 9 or 10 o'clock, a shard of light crept down and would hit the cafes at the bottom, and you'd sit there in your seat with your coffee and let the sun warm you up. Cafe life was a huge part of my month there. It was a ritual I loved. Watching the waiters, the way they behaved, and the ever-changing kind of cast of characters that would turn up each morning. Of course, you had this kind of crazy floor show that would happen, watching motorists nearly crash into cyclists and shouting, and the man with the umbrella that only wore one glove. But it's the sort of things that made your mind wander, and you start to kind of make up your own endings to the story. I arrived late at night. It'd be the first time in a long time that I'd travelled alone since COVID. I realised how much fear I was holding on to, how much had happened to us as a family and as a nation, for myself, how much we'd been restricted and how scared we were, or scared I was. I was living on my nerves for the first few days, wondering what would happen, what I'd let myself in for. In the afternoon, I'd settled down to draw with my ink and pen. So the first drawing I did was in Rue de Jean, this road that was just near the apartment, and it was full of butchers squeezing these huge troughs of meat, putting them into bags for weighing for their customers. One of my favourite things about the area was all the steps. So they were just these dramatic punctuation in the landscape. And of course there was a battle constantly going on, particularly in the mornings. You had these joggers, they must have been timing themselves, running up and down the steps. One day I was out and there was a wedding party in one of the restaurants right at the bottom of the Montmartre hill. They'd had their wedding dinner, wedding lunch, and they then climbed the steps. But of course there was lots of children, there was pushchairs, ended up carrying these pushchairs in a big procession up the Sacré-Cœur to have their wedding photos taken at the top. And all the joggers and the tourists were bustling in, trying to push each other out the way. With the Sacré-Cœur being such a dominant feature, a lot of my themes went back to it. Going to the 7 a.m. Mass, where the priest's voice somehow hovered above you in the space of the dome. This total presence that spiritually captured you, a voice you believed, although I didn't understand a lot of what he was saying. I really believed it. I was really transfixed by his voice, which seemed to be everywhere. The Sacré-Cœur towered over the whole area, really, the whole district. When I went up there, all the railings were covered in these locks, the locks of lovers, I suppose. When you see them, there's so many of them, they look like a kind of fur, they're a kind of monster of love. And one of my drawings I did was this huge kind of gorilla or ape, like King Kong, rising up above the Sacré-Cœur, all covered in this fur of locks.